All forms of exercise will, without a doubt, benefit you in one way or another, but with a plethora of sports and exercise modalities out there, is there any form of exercise that should be non-negotiable and structured as a staple in our exercise routine regardless of our preferred sport? Well, if you're interested in going beyond optimizing not just your sport-specific fitness, but you're also chasing better overall health and prolonging your longevity, then the answer is a resounding yes, and it is Zone 2 running. Spending as little as 90 minutes a week running in Zone 2, broken down into 3 short and easy 30-minute sessions, is one of the very best things that you can do for your health and longevity. In this video, we're going to discuss all the benefits that Zone 2 running offers and how to effectively do it. We will also discuss how Zone 2 compares against training in higher intensities. But why am I emphasizing Zone 2 running specifically and not cycling or swimming or any other sport that we could use for Zone 2 training? Well, walking and running at a moderate pace are undoubtedly the most fundamental human movements, and paleoanthropologists have confirmed that those movements are what the human body is designed to do. Basically, we could go as far as saying that we humans are born to run. Running is a weight-bearing and impact exercise that offers unique benefits for bone health, which are not found in many other forms of exercise. Every time your foot strikes the ground, a force is transmitted through your bones, stimulating a natural process called bone remodeling. This process involves the breakdown of old bone tissue and the formation of new bone tissue, which over time leads to increased bone density. This strengthening of bones is crucial for preventing conditions like osteoporosis, a disease that weakens bones and makes them more susceptible to fracture, especially as we age. The repeated impact from running helps keep bones strong and resilient for long-term skeletal health. Unlike low-impact exercises such as cycling, swimming, rowing, or even cross-country skiing, which, by the way, are great for cardiovascular endurance but place very little stress on the bones, running, on the other hand, offers the dual benefit of improving aerobic capacity and bone strength. In non-weight-bearing exercise modalities, your bones don't experience the same kind of impact forces that stimulate bone remodeling to build stronger bones. Incorporating Zone 2 running into any training routine adds another layer of benefit. In addition to improving mitochondrial efficiency and cardiovascular health, Zone 2 running delivers this important bone strengthening stimulus without the high levels of stress found in high-intensity running. By regularly engaging in steady, moderate pace running, you're allowing your bones to gradually adapt to the impact forces, enhancing their strength and density. This makes Zone 2 running a powerful complement to any form of training, ensuring that your body is not only muscularly strong but also structurally resilient and capable of enduring the demands of both athletic performance and healthy aging. However, if you think that Zone 2 running is a waste of your time because you're already an age group or masters athlete competing in the sport, I would urge you to rethink that. Take for example Tadej Pogačar, who in 2024 is considered the world's best cyclist after accomplishing the highest achievement in professional road bicycle racing by winning the Giro d'Italia, the Tour de France, and the UCI World Championship road race all in the same year, also known as the Triple Crown of cycling, said in a recent interview that he includes running into his off-season regimen and he tries to keep running as long as possible into his racing season.
In the last 2 years, I tried to put running also into off-season. I try to start in off-season and I try to keep it as long as possible into season.
If you think about it, wouldn't cross-country mountain biking be a more related off-season cross-training activity for a top pro cyclist who is paid millions to win the biggest and most grueling road cycling races in the world? Yet Tadej chooses to run instead. Well, for a guy that has access to the very best minds in sports science and physiology to help him train to be the best, that definitely speaks a lot about the benefits of running. And if you fall on the other end of the spectrum and think that running is too challenging for you, I also urge you to rethink that, as getting your intensity into Zone 2 might only require you to walk briskly or jog very slowly. Although these have less impact than running, these are still weight-bearing exercises that offer similar benefits. Personally, I enjoy cycling a lot and I get into the pool about once per week for a 2 to 3 kilometer swim, but depending on the season, I still run anywhere between 80 to 120 kilometers per week, most of which are done in Zone 2. But before we get any further, let's first define what Zone 2 is. If you've done any form of endurance training for over a month, or if you've dipped your toes into improving your health and prolonging your longevity, you'll probably have heard the term Zone 2 thrown around quite a bit. But what exactly is it? Well, the clearest definition I found defines Zone 2 as an exercise intensity that stimulates the most mitochondrial function, the most fat oxidation, and the most lactate clearance, and it mainly recludes type 1 muscle fibers, also known as the slow twitch fibers. it is also the maximum level of effort that one can maintain without accumulating lactate. Lactate is still produced, but at this effort level, the clearance rate of lactate is matched with the production rate, resulting in no buildup of lactate. While the maximum blood lactate concentration before lactate starts to build up is about 2 millimolar per liter, with the zone 2 sweet spot sitting somewhere between 1.7 and 2 millimolar per liter. This range corresponds to the point that remains just below lactate threshold 1 or LT1, which is the point at which lactate begins to accumulate more rapidly in the blood. At this lower level of lactate, the body is still operating at a predominantly aerobic state, efficiently producing energy with minimum lactate buildup, which is the hallmark of zone 2 training. Let's unpack that further. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, and their function is to break down carbohydrates and fats to be converted into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP in short, which are the chemical energy needed to power our cells, and it is essential for life. Zone 2 exercise stimulates the growth of our mitochondria the most by creating more mitochondria through a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. With more mitochondria per cell, the better our mitochondrial function becomes. Mitochondria is the only pathway in our bodies by which fat can be broken down and converted into ATP to be used by our cells as energy. Thus, the more mitochondria we have in each cell, the more effective we are at oxidizing fat. As zone 2 exercise stimulates the growth of mitochondria the most, it is also the intensity that oxidizes the most fat. Also, mitochondria is a primary pathway by which lactate produced by our working muscles is oxidized and reused as fuel through a process called the Krebs cycle, up to a point of lactic saturation in the mitochondria. Once lactate is saturated in the mitochondria, all the excess lactate is then released into our bloodstream. So once again, the more mitochondria we have in each cell, the more lactate can be oxidized and reused as fuel. Finally, mitochondrial density is a lot higher in type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers than in type 2 fast twitch fibers. So when we engage the type 1 fibers during the low intensity steady state running of zone 2, we are stimulating the growth of mitochondria. Now that we have defined zone 2, how would we know if we are running in zone 2? Well, there are a couple of ways to do this. Since zone 2 is the definition of mitochondrial function, fat oxidation and lactate clearance, the best ways to measure zone 2 would be to measure the exercise intensity that stimulates the most mitochondrial growth, the most fat oxidation, or the most lactate clearance. However, none of these are easily measured outside of a laboratory setting. That said, the most accessible to an average person such as myself is lactate testing. However, the biggest drawbacks of lactate testing are the cost and invasiveness. Not everyone wants to invest in a $500 lactate meter and prick their fingers or earlobes every time they exercise. Plus, each test strip costs between $2 and $2.50, which is a cost for every time you prick your finger to get one blood lactate concentration readout. But for those that do, such as myself, we want to be working at an intensity that is close to but just below the first lactate threshold, and that's between 1.7 to 2 millimolars per liter. For those that can't be bothered with lactate testing, the most common measurement of zone 2 is heart rate. While zone 2 can correspond to a range of heart rates that correlates to a percentage of maximum heart rate, it can be rather nuanced, so some considerations must be taken into account. Firstly, as we have previously discussed, zone 2 is a definition of mitochondrial function, fat oxidation, and lactate clearance. Thus, it has in fact nothing to do with heart rate. But despite that, we can still correlate zone 2 to a heart rate range for simplicity, which we'll discuss more very soon. Also, zone 2 heart rate range for an individual can differ for different exercise modalities. Using myself as an example, my zone 2 heart rate range for cycling is different from my zone 2 range for running. Finally, the information that you will find if you Google it is very contradicting. Some consider zone 2 as 60 to 70% of maximum heart rate, while others consider zone 2 to be between 70 to 80% of maximum heart rate. Despite all that, is there still a heart rate range that most accurately correlates to a blood lactate concentration of 1.7 to 2 millimoles per liter? After researching the lactate test results for more than 20 people, I found that everyone tested had their heart rates between 70 to 80% of maximum heart rate when their blood lactate concentration was between 1.7 to 2 millimolar per liter. Some of the greatest advantages of using heart rate to monitor training intensity are its accessibility, ease of use, and convenience. You get real-time feedback via a watch or smartphone to quickly and accurately determine if you're training at the correct intensity. When I tested mine, both on the bicycle and when running, I also fell within the 70 to 80% of maximum heart rate. Just bear in mind that this may differ from person to person, but using 70 to 80% of max heart rate is a good place to start. Then there's the MEF 180 formula, which was developed by Dr. Phil Maffetone. Subtract your age from 180, then make some small adjustments to that number based on your current health and training experience and arrive at a heart rate number that would be your maximum aerobic heart rate. Your zone 2 heart rate ceiling should be just below this number. Obviously, you will need a heart rate monitor to measure this. For me at 46 years old, my maximum aerobic heart rate based on the MEF 180 formula is 134 beats per minute, which actually sits right in the middle of my zone 2 heart rate range at 75% of my maximum heart rate. Finally, there's a talk test. This is absolutely free and it is the easiest method to measure zone 2 intensity, albeit not the most accurate. When you're in zone 2, you should be able to hold a conversation, although it will be a bit laborious. Put it this way, you can talk but you can't sing. And although zone 2 intensity is low enough that you can hold a conversation, you would probably prefer not to talk but listen to music or an audiobook instead, or perhaps spend your time thinking about something you're working on or a pressing problem. Now that we can measure our zone 2 intensity, let's talk about the benefits. The benefits of zone 2 running is uniform across the whole spectrum, from the total beginner starting to exercise for the first time to the avid age group athlete chasing a podium position at their very next race, because healthy mitochondria is a key to both athletic performance and metabolic health. Let's start with fat loss, because everyone that exercises definitely has that as part of the reason for exercising, however small or big that part may be. Fat loss also goes hand in hand with metabolic flexibility, so let's address these two together. While carbohydrates can be metabolized in different ways in our bodies, fats can only be converted to energy in the mitochondria. Across the spectrum of all exercise intensities, exercising at lower intensities will generally be burning more fat, and as the exercise intensity increases, the ratio of fat to carbohydrate oxidation will diminish to a point where only carbohydrates are metabolized, which usually occurs when we go beyond our aerobic threshold. As mentioned earlier, zone 2 is the intensity that oxidizes the most fat. It is also the intensity that stimulates the most mitochondrial growth, and since fat can only be oxidized in the mitochondria, zone 2 is where the combined magic of these two factors happen and fat loss gets supercharged in the zone. Thus, the more time you spend in zone 2, the more mitochondrial growth you will achieve and the more fat you will lose. It's as simple as that. For most of my adult life, I've maintained a relatively lean physique with about 17 to 80% body fat. However, since I started running in zone 2, my body fat percentage has dropped significantly to just 12%, and now at 46 years old, I'm the leanest I've ever been my whole life. However, there is a caveat. Not everyone can effectively metabolize fat immediately when they start exercising in zone 2. This is due to a condition called metabolic dysfunction or metabolic inflexibility, which stems from insulin resistance that is caused by a diet high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Think lots of sweetened beverages and ultra-processed foods. For those with metabolic dysfunction, their bodies are unable to switch between the two energy substrates of carbohydrates and fats. They are only able to metabolize carbohydrates without the ability to tap into their fat stores. This was very cleverly demonstrated by Inigo San Millan and George Brooks, who published a study comparing 3 groups of subjects: professional male cyclists, moderately active healthy males, and sedentary men with metabolic dysfunction. All 3 groups rode stationary bicycles, and after a 15-minute warm-up, they started graded leg cycling exercise until exhaustion, with intensity increasing by 35 watts every 10 minutes when the subjects reached about 80% of maximum heart rate, which corresponds to about the ceiling of our zone 2 heart rate range. The professional cyclists were producing a huge amount of power while still oxidizing primarily fat, whereas the sedentary subjects with metabolic dysfunction relied almost entirely on glucose at this intensity, and the active healthy males fell somewhere in the middle. Professional cyclists, or any professional endurance athlete, generally spends about 80% of their training in zone 2, and they are considered to have the healthiest mitochondria on the planet due to their massive amount of time they spend training in this zone. Thus, this study highlights a crucial point. The more time a subject spends training in zone 2, the greater the stimulus for mitochondrial growth, leading to greater metabolic flexibility and increased fat oxidation at any given exercise intensity. But if you've been sedentary and are dealing with metabolic dysfunction, don't lose hope. As mentioned earlier, mitochondria are highly plastic and adaptable. By engaging aerobic zone 2 exercise, you can stimulate their growth. Gradually, your body's ability to burn fat will improve, and with consistent effort, you reach a point where fat oxidation will accelerate significantly, compounding your progress over time. Let's now talk about how zone 2 exercise prolongs your longevity. As we grow older, the number and quality of our mitochondria mitochondria starts to decline, and that's one of the most significant hallmarks of aging. That decline leads to all sorts of chronic metabolic diseases, but all is not doomed because when we exercise aerobically in zone 2, it stimulates the growth of new and more efficient mitochondria through a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. At the same time, old, damaged, and dysfunctional mitochondria are being removed through another process called mitophagy. In addition to that, Zone 2 exercise builds a base of endurance and muscular strength for everything you do in life, be it walking up a flight of stairs, playing with your grandkids, or for VO2 max workouts. Yes, I said VO2 max workouts, as VO2 max is regarded as a primary biomarker for aging. VO2 max represents the maximum volume of oxygen that our bodies can utilize per minute per kilogram of body weight during peak exertion. Generally, VO2 max declines with age by about 10% per decade, but regardless of one's chronological age, the higher one's VO2 max at any given age, the younger one is biologically. Although genetics accounts for about 40 to 60% of an individual's VO2 max potential, the remaining portion is highly trainable, which is great news. Using myself as an example again, I'm 46 years old, but if through training I can achieve a VO2 max that correlates to someone in their 20s, I would biologically have the health of someone 20 years younger. Although Zone 2 training can increase VO2 max for some people, that is not the main mechanism by which Zone 2 helps in this regard. Instead, Zone 2 training helps you build your base fitness so you're able to do the much more physically demanding VO2 max workouts. If you are untrained and start off by doing a VO2 max interval workout, you're not going to be able to execute the workout properly, and it's very highly likely that you would get injured. Now, it's awesome that Zone 2 improves our metabolic health, accelerates fat loss, and prolongs our longevity, but what about brain health? Well, it has a profound impact on brain health and cognition. Zone 2 training stimulates the release of key molecules such as brain-derived neurotropic factors and vascular endothelial growth factor, both of which play crucial roles in supporting the growth and maintenance of neurons and blood vessels in the brain. Also, Zone 2 training promotes neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form and recognize synaptic connections, particularly in response to learning and after injury. Enhanced neuroplasticity leads to the development of stronger neuronal networks, which improves cognitive functions such as memory, attention, and learning. The brain's capacity for processing and storing information is also improved, making it more efficient at problem solving and decision making. In addition to that, the improved blood circulation ensures that the brain receives adequate supply of oxygen and glucose, which is critical for optimal mental performance. Most importantly to me, Zone 2 training helps to slow the onset of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia as we age by maintaining brain volume, particularly in areas related to memory and executive function, such as the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. The benefits of Zone 2 training in preventing neurodegenerative diseases are cumulative, meaning that the more we engage in Zone 2 training, the greater the protective effect. Personally, I have family members affected by neurodegenerative disease, and it is deeply heartbreaking to witness a loved one gradually lose their sense of self and recognition for those who care for them the most. Thus, Zone 2 training has become and will continue to be an essential part of my routine for the rest of my life. Furthermore, Zone 2 training has been linked to improved mood, reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety, and better overall mental health, all of which contribute to enhanced cognitive function throughout life. Now let's talk about athletic performance. The benefits of Zone 2 training on athletic performance are also cumulative, meaning the more time spent in Zone 2, the greater the improvement in endurance and overall performance. As mentioned earlier, Zone 2 training enhances the body's ability to efficiently utilize fat as a fuel source. This helps the athlete to conserve their limited glycogen stores for higher intensity efforts, allowing them to maintain a steady pace for longer duration without fatiguing quickly. Additionally, Zone 2 training allows athletes to accumulate high volumes without the risk of overtraining or injury due to its lower intensity, making it essential for building endurance. Another significant advantage of Zone 2 training is the improvement in aerobic efficiency, which provides a solid base for athletes by getting their bodies ready to train harder and longer at much higher intensities. In short, the more time athletes devote to Zone 2 training, the more they enhance their endurance, energy efficiency, and ability to perform at their peak. I like to think of Zone 2 as a form of training that gets us ready to train hard. But why train in Zone 2 and not in other intensities? Firstly, training in Zone 2 specifically targets aerobic development and endurance in ways that training in high intensities are unable to. Zone 2 training enhances the body's ability to use fat as fuel and improves mitochondrial efficiency. This zone allows athletes to exercise for longer durations while conserving glycogen, which helps delay bonking or hitting the wall during extended efforts. Higher intensity zones primarily rely on carbohydrates for energy, leading to quicker depletion of energy stores and faster exhaustion. While high intensity zones are excellent for improving speed and anaerobic power, overemphasizing them without a strong aerobic base can lead to quicker burnout and slower recovery. Zone 2 training, on the other hand, is low stress and allows for high volume, making it great for building long-term endurance and reducing injury risk. In addition, Zone 2 training builds the foundation for better performance in higher zones. As briefly discussed earlier, building a strong aerobic base enhances your capacity to perform at higher intensities, such as VO2 max workouts, by improving your body's ability to use oxygen more efficiently. Simply put, without solid Zone 2 training, your performance in those higher intensity efforts will be limited because your body won't be able to sustain them for long. Don't get me wrong, higher intensity training is just as important, as spending time in these zones are essential for improving your speed, power, and VO2 max, which, as we discussed earlier, is also the key to prolonging longevity. Training in high intensities will help you to develop the ability to push through lactic thresholds, which is critical if you say want to run a faster 5K, 10K, half or full marathon, or perhaps increase your functional threshold power. These zones challenge the anaerobic system, increasing your ability to perform at peak levels, making them vital for improving overall performance and giving you the competitive edge. The key here is balance. That's why the 80-20 training model is so popular among both professional athletes and age groupers. This approach emphasizes that 80% of training should be done at lower intensities, like Zone 2, while only 20% is dedicated to higher intensity efforts. The 80-20 model allows athletes to build a strong aerobic base through low intensity work, promoting endurance, fat metabolism, and recovery, while still incorporating the necessary high intensity training to develop speed and power. The model's success is reflected in its adoption by elite athletes in endurance sports like running, cycling, triathlon, cross-country skiing, and rowing, as well as by age groupers without risking burnout or injury. In essence, high-intensity training and Zone 2 complement each other. Zone 2 builds the foundation for endurance, fat-burning efficiency, and recovery, while high-intensity zones sharpen your anaerobic age, speed, and power. Do keep in mind that the 80-20 training is a percentage-based model, so the more training that is done in Zone 2, the more high-intensity training the body can handle. Running in Zone 2 has helped me to accumulate a lot of mileage through the winter without getting injured. By summer, I was running up to 150 kilometers per week, and that build-up allowed me to run over 30 kilometers at a pace that was faster than my goal marathon pace every week. But what if you're a strength athlete who devotes time only to lifting weights in the gym? Should you add Zone 2 running into your routine? Absolutely. Even if you are primarily a strength athlete focusing on lifting weights, adding Zone 2 running into your routine is incredibly valuable to both your longevity and athletic performance. Strength training plays a critical role in preventing sarcopenia as we age, but strength training alone does little to stimulate the growth of mitochondria, which are critical for energy production and overall metabolic health. Zone 2 training, such as steady-state running, specifically promotes mitochondrial growth and efficiency, improving your body's ability to produce energy aerobically. This can enhance your endurance and recovery, even benefiting your performance in strength workouts by improving how efficient your muscles use oxygen. By incorporating Zone 2 running, you are addressing an area of fitness that strength training doesn't fully cover, and that's your cardiovascular health and your mitochondrial function. With so many benefits to reap, everyone should consider adding Zone 2 running into their routine. Although more is better, we are all time crunched with numerous responsibilities and demands on our time. For someone that is just starting out, try to get a minimum of 90 minutes of Zone 2 exercise a week and gradually build up to 150 minutes as you get fitter. Break up the 90 minutes into 3 easy 30-minute sessions spread across the week, then add one more session a few weeks in to get to 120 minutes, and finally add the 5th session to get to 150 minutes in a week. Once you get there, you can start to sprinkle in some higher intensity workouts. If your goal is just to improve your health and longevity, focusing on Zone 2 and VO2 max workouts are just about all you need. But if you have athletic aspirations, such as myself, then working out at other intensities between Zone 2 and VO2 max should also be included in your routine. Thank you for watching and getting to the end of the video. But before you click off, help me out by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. That small gesture on your part will not only greatly help the growth and visibility of this channel, but it will also include you into this small community of health and fitness minded individuals that I'm trying to connect with through the videos that I post on this channel. I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.